Welcome. I'm going to ask Tim Groves, the chair of the Meadville Area Water Authority Board, to welcome you.
In my limited role that Frank let me do, I'm Tim Groves, chairman of the Meadville Area Water Authority, and on behalf of the board members, we certainly appreciate you guys taking the time to come, and we certainly hope we learned quite a bit tonight. Without much other ado, Frank Coppola, it's yours.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Why we're here tonight, the board has been tasked with the decision to whether to fluoridate our water or not to fluoridate our water. And that's why we're here to discuss that tonight, to have a community discussion about that. Next slide, please. Our purpose is a discussion to gain knowledge, information regarding both sides, pro and con, and we're going to allow members of the audience also to speak. We have somewhere between 15 and 20 people who have signed up to speak. If you want to speak but you have not signed up as yet, please go over to the table and do so. Thank you. Next slide, please. My name is Frank Coppola, and I am your moderator. My job is to make sure we follow the rules, make sure that each side has a fair opportunity to present their respective cases, and that you have an opportunity to listen without being interrupted. I need to tell you this. Mike Crowley is here, right? Mike, would you stand up for a second? Right. So you put me in the front page. It's a payback, buddy. All right. Mike has done a wonderful job covering this event tonight. Thank you, Mike. Now he also indicated on the front page of the newspaper my age. You did, didn't you?
I don't know if it was on the front page.
Yeah, I was on the front page. Anyway, I'm not 72. I just turned 73. Okay? Now, I would like, see, I didn't expect to make it to 73, so I'd like a round of applause for making it to 73. Thank you. Next slide, please, Abe. Our agenda. A community discussion, presentations from both sides. We will allow time for rebuttals. After the rebuttals, we will open for public comment for those people who have registered to do so. Next slide, please. If you are not speaking tonight and you would like further input, there are a couple other ways to do that, and you'll see that up on the screen at this point in time. You can write letters to that address, to the Meadville Area Water Authority, emails to that particular email address, or the website, and you go to the website, there'll be a toggle that says Contact Us. And you press that and you'll see it's pretty self-explanatory at that point in time. In any case, I'll put this back up on the screen later tonight in case you don't have a chance to write things down, okay? Each of you, next slide please, Abe. Each of you has a vested interest in this issue tonight, and hopefully when you leave this room, you're going to have a better understanding of both sides of the issue. And I understand, and as the board understands, that this can be an emotional issue. I ask you to park those emotions at this point in time, and I ask you for certain behaviors tonight so that we can get through this without interruption. We want your input, and we'll get that through the speakers after the presentations and the rebuttal. Next slide, please. So, I need your help. We want to make sure that we give you and the Meadville Area Water Authority Board equal access to information. And we want both sides to be presented without interruption. And then we want to hear what some of the audience members have to say. We do have some very qualified people that are going to present tonight, and we'll make those introductions in just a minute. Okay? Next page, please. I ask you to practice civility tonight. Please be courteous, please be polite, please have good manners, please be considerate, please be respectful. We want a professional atmosphere. Please cooperate. I ask you this. Do not react while the speakers are speaking and making their presentations. At the end of their presentation, certainly you may clap. There's nothing wrong with that. When they're making their rebuttals, I ask you to do the same thing. Okay? So, jeering, next slide please. Here's what we don't want. Here's what I ask you to cooperate with. I'll let you read. The last statement is fairly simple. It's not a pep rally. I didn't want to say this, but I'm going to. I reserve the right, as the moderator, to stop this meeting at any point if it gets out of hand. I reserve the right to interrupt any speaker if they get out of hand. I pray to God I don't have to do that, so please don't put me in that position. Okay? Now, question. Will you cooperate? Thank you. I appreciate that. Raise your hand if you're going to cooperate. Now, sir, you didn't raise your hand. All right? I was pointing to Dick Astor. Is what I was pointing. Next slide. Here's our presenters. Dr. Johnson from Meadville Medical Center. She's the Chief Medical Officer at Meadville Medical Center. She'll introduce her guest speakers. And Dr. Chris Knapp on my right. And he is in private practice, chiropractic practice. And he also is the chair of the Clean Water Meadville. Am I correct with that? Okay. So why don't we at this time, Denise, would you like to introduce your people at this point? You want this or you want to go?
Thank you. With me tonight is Dr. Johnny Johnson. He's a pediatric dentist from Palm Harbor, Pinellas County, Florida. He has a Master of Science degree from the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, and his research was the investigation of the fluoride content in infant formulas in the U.S. His research involved extensive literature reviews of water fluoridation and fluoride to complete his Master of Science degree. Dr. Johnson's first involvement in community water fluoridation challenges was when the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners in Florida voted to cease water fluoridation in 2011 to over 700,000 residents. He and the community were successful in returning water fluoridation 15 months later. I also have with me Dr. Steve Slott. He was a general dentist for over 33 years in Burlington, North Carolina in private practice, consisting mainly of treatment of Medicaid recipients, low-income and indigent patients. He is the founder of a large portable free dental program in North Carolina. It's called North Carolina Missions of Mercy, which conducted treatments in North Carolina, but also in 5 other states. He did that for 6 years. And those are the 2 other doctors who will be with me tonight.
Dr. Knapp, would you like to introduce you? I have a handheld here if you'd like.
Okay, that'd be fine. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'd like to, can you hear me? I'd like to introduce Dr. Paul Connett. He's a retired professor of chemistry specializing in environmental chemistry and toxicology. He was a professor of chemistry at St. Lawrence University. He has a BA from Cambridge University and a PhD from Dartmouth College. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Knapp. I'd like to also introduce members of the Meadville Area Water Authority Board. You've met Tim Grove, who's the chair. To his left is Hal Tubbs. Hal, would you raise your hand, please? Right. To Tim's right is Mark Gilday. Dennis Fenton, Dr. Dennis Fenton. John Fulmer, and Solicitor Ted Watts. Thank you. Next slide, please, Ed. Excuse me. Okay. Next slide, Ed. Each side will have 30 minutes to make presentation. You'll see me during the presentations give them cues as to how far along in the time limit they are. At the end of their 30 minutes, the first one, then we'll have the next group go for 30 minutes. We'll recess at that point in time so that they have a chance to prepare their rebuttals respectively. We'll come back together, and then each side will have 10 minutes for a rebuttal. At that point in time, we'll open it up then to the speakers who have registered at the table over here who want to say something tonight. We have a hot mic for you so you can speak. You'll have 3 minutes. You can ask questions or you can give opinion or both. If you ask questions, please be cognizant that we want you to ask a question and get the answers within 3 minutes. And both sides get a chance to answer the question. Okay? So I'll reiterate that as we move into the meeting, all right? Now, I need two trustworthy people. I'm smiling, okay? Now we have two councilmen here. You knew I was going to do this, didn't you? Come on up here, guys. All right, Sean? John? Now, I want one to do it, the other one to watch it to make sure he does it right. Okay? Two pieces of paper. I want you to put a 1 on one piece of paper and a 2 on the other piece of paper, and then fold the paper up. Now, the one that picks 1 will get a choice of whether to go first or not. Okay? Ladies first? Absolutely. All right. Dr. Johnson, what do you have?
I have 1.
You choose to go first or second?
I'll go first.
Okay. You're on.
Okay, good evening. Good evening. Well, thank you all for coming out here tonight, and I really appreciate the opportunity to address you to request that the Meadville Area Water Authority adjust the level of fluoride in our drinking water from the current 0.2 parts per million up to 0.7 parts per million to the level that is optimal for dental health. I'm an OBGYN physician who was in private practice here and then became an administrator at Meadville Medical Center. For the past 20 years, I have worked and lived in Meadville and have been honored to take care of patients in my practice. While I was practicing OBGYN, I was often asked by dentists, our local dentists, who were also treating my pregnant patients, what could they have for pain? What are they allowed to have for antibiotics? And I saw a lot of patients who were pregnant who had very poor dental health. Before I came here to Meadville, I was in Tennessee and practiced there. Saw many pregnant women, but really not to the extent that I saw here with dental disease. It's also important to note that the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists recommend that pregnant women have access to water that is optimally fluoridated during their pregnancies. Now, as an administrator, I see a large number of patients seeking care for dental issues in our emergency department as well as in our clinics. I've seen the statistics that rate Meadville and Crawford County well behind other areas within our state and in our nation for dental health. From these two perspectives, I've been concerned. I'm a physician, and besides practicing medicine, we also advocate for the health and the well-being of our patients and those we serve. As a community hospital, we have invested in dental services as well as education, but there's more that we can do. Community water fluoridation is a well-established public health measure that has been proven to decrease the incidence of cavities by 1/4 or 25%. That is significant. Even with the use of toothpaste with fluoride, the benefit of using fluoridated water is additive. And studies have shown that stopping fluoridation, even while continuing to use toothpaste with fluoride, does result in increased cavities. Community water fluoridation is easy, it's reliable, it doesn't depend on someone doing something regularly, repetitively. Even with our best intentions, most of us aren't able to complete a course of antibiotics as directed. But community water fluoridation doesn't require that you have that discipline. The science on effectiveness and safety of fluoride is clear. I believe that most of us use toothpaste with fluoride, and in our school system, our local school system here, the vast majority of parents request that their children receive those fluoride tablets. And I believe that the argument is not whether or not fluoride in the water is safe and effective, but whether or not we should choose whether we get it. I do believe that we should exercise our right to choose. But in doing that, we should not deny a well-established, safe, and effective benefit to others. Many of us in this room could opt out of fluoridation if we wanted to. It can be easily filtered, and it's really not as expensive as some have claimed. But those who would benefit the most are not having their voices heard. We collected more than 1,000 signatures of customers of this water authority and over 200 postcards asking for community water fluoridation. But there's still those children under 18, those in poor health, those with little resources, and the list goes on. Denying them the benefit of community water fluoridation is like saying, I know that this could benefit you, but because you don't brush and floss regularly or avoid sugary drinks, you deserve to have poor dental health. This goes against what I believe as a citizen of Meadville and certainly as a practitioner of medicine. I encourage you to think of others, realizing that you can certainly choose for yourself. For all these reasons, I ask that the Water Authority approve a fluoridation program for Meadville. I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Johnson, who will continue the presentation.
Thank you all. My name is Johnny Johnson. I'm a pediatric dentist from Palm Harbor, Florida. I had a nice little bicycle accident in 2002 and became disabled to practice clinical dentistry. 2009 I had to stop because my right wrist is fused. I can't bend it any longer. So it just happened to be that in 2011 that my county commission decided to take up the subject of water fluoridation on the spur of the moment during a meeting on budget, which is interesting time to take it up. So anyhow, the county commission, after 4.5 hours of hearing people speak and argue against fluoridation, used the arguments that those who oppose fluoridation claiming that the CDC is corrupt and they are politically motivated, and I can't even begin to tell you the number of other claims. They voted 4-3 to cease water fluoridation for 700,000 people. With my background and my time that I have put into research and publishing 2 papers on community water fluoridation in peer-reviewed literature, I was angry, and I just would not let it stand. 700,000 of my kids and my families and my adults, my own family as well, living in Pinellas County, doing something that's not based on science, but based on emotion and based on own opinions. So I went on to represent those that were going to refluoridate the county, got asked to lead the effort, and 15 months later, we had it back. And 3 out of the 4 who voted against water fluoridation were voted out of office because of that. 65-35. A silent majority spoke up and said, you're not going to rob our families of fluoridation. So that's my point of beginning on this. I really am sharing this with you so that you all will understand that this is something that is used widely as a way to get communities to stop fluoridation. Stories against it. It is not based in the science. The science is crystal clear that water fluoridation works. It's safe and effective, causes no adverse health effects in anyone, and produces huge savings in the healthcare system and people having to spend money on teeth that did not need to get cavities in the first place. What are the health benefits for cavity of water fluoridation? Well, cavities are reduced for all. No one says you don't have to brush your teeth, you don't have to eat a good diet. We all know that. This is just one of the things, like Dr. Johnson said, you drink the water, you reap the benefits. If you don't change a single behavior of how you brush, nothing else in your life, it's not a crutch, it's a benefit. We all get 25% less cavities over our lifetime, and adults benefit more than children do. I know that may sound funny, but as we are older, as we are adults longer than we are children. As we have gum recession occur, our roots begin to get exposed, and cavities happening on our root surface, which is softer than the enamel, is very, very aggressive. And I will tell you that is one of the number one reasons that adults lose their permanent teeth is because of root surface cavities. Water fluoridation helps to reduce that, to have less cavities on your roots, extremely beneficial. Systematic reviews have shown time and time again in up-to-date reviews that continue to go on that water fluoridation is still needed. When you begin water fluoridation in the community, you will reduce cavities by almost 30%. When you start here, within 5 years, you'll have 30% less cavities just by drinking the water. On the opposite side, when you remove fluoridation from a community, even though we're all brushing with toothpaste with fluoride and everything else that we normally do, you're going to have increases rapidly up to around 17–18%. Calgary in Canada stopped in 2011. Their cavities are skyrocketing. They are skyrocketing. And they are in a move to refluoridate. Another community that happened in is Antigua, Wisconsin, several years ago. Same thing. Cavities began to increase greatly to pre-fluoridation levels, and they voted it back in. Don't let that happen to you. Vote it in and keep it. The cavities are disproportionately distributed to those that are disadvantaged. About 20% of us get most of the cavities. I was one of those kids that grew up without cavities and had a mouthful of crowns, root canals, and extractions, and it's not fun. But when you look at Meadville, you look at your poverty level here, that's your most disadvantaged families. They have cavities more than others, but we all get them. I don't care what walk of life or what income level you have. That means that 1 out of every 4 people you walk by on the street coming in here today is living in poverty in this city. That is huge. That is larger than the average for Pennsylvania. Why do cavities matter? It's the #1 chronic disease of childhood. The #1 chronic disease. It's 5 times more common than asthma and 20 times more common than obesity. We talk about obesity. Cavities are the #1 chronic childhood disease that we have in this country. People die from it. The one gentleman on the top right was a truck driver, had an abscess tooth. He died. He was from California because that infection went to his brain. Below him is a gentleman that made national news several years ago, Diamante driver, same thing. Abscess tooth, went backwards with a vein that's in your head, right to the brain, died. We've all seen kids that look like this young lady that's been beat up. She hasn't been beat up. That's an infection in an upper molar and it's ready, her eyes closing. Within a few hours a day, she would be dead if she did not receive extensive antibiotics. It's also painful, tough to focus in school, miss days from work, on and on. If anybody's had a cavity with an abscess or an infection, pain, and I have, it does captivate your every thought. Community water fluoridation is effective in reducing cavities for everyone of at least 25%, no matter if your socioeconomic status, your age, your level of education, your race, your ethnicity, or your access to dental care. The savings are as $1 invested in fluoridation gives you a return on investment of $38. I know with the economy right now, if any of us had a return on investment like that and that we could have in our retirement accounts, we'd be jumping on it. It also reduces the amount of pain and suffering that people have and tooth loss, as well as inability to go to work, inability to focus in school, and it has resulted in over 95 million hours of missed school. That was a net as of 1999. 51 million hours of school in this country because of cavities with children. Water fluoridation is widely supported. And I'm not putting the medical and dental groups up here first. Everybody says this is a medical or a dental issue. National Head Start, National Healthy Mothers and Healthy Babies Coalition, Child Welfare League, the U.S. Department of Defense and Veterans Affairs, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Dental Association, the CDC, Mayo Clinic, and the World Health Organization all support water fluoridation as safe and effective. Within the past 7 years, recent studies have shown that water fluoridation on top of toothpaste and fluoride varnishes and fluoride rinses continues to reduce cavities. And again, those that can't afford to purchase insurance, those are the families that are going to benefit the most from this. But you cannot deny each of us in here, adults especially, the ability to have that benefit of reduced cavities. Again, like I said, like you can see on this pretty tooth up here, that wonderful root cavity, and I'm going to tell you that I had great skills with my hands before it was messed up. I couldn't fix that. We put a filling in it, it would fall out. I guarantee you, you're going to lose that tooth, and that is because that part of your tooth is soft, cavities are very aggressive, and if you were a dentist, you would know that this stuff goes on all the time. We hate it. Water fluoridation helps to prevent it. How does fluoride work? Well, fluoridation works in two ways. One is from the outside of your tooth, and that's called that's called topical. So topical ways are toothpaste, topical ways are fluoride varnishes, and it also includes water fluoridation, not when you drink it, but when it gets into your bloodstream and it comes out into your saliva and constantly coat your teeth 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's that low amount coating our teeth all day long that helps prevent cavities. It also works in children when their teeth are developing. It gets inside the teeth and it makes the teeth harder from the inside out, so you have a dual benefit. So within cavities being prevented, excuse me, I'm sorry, look at the minutes I had left. Within cavities being prevented, you've got a dual impact. You've got fluoride hardening your tooth from inside out. You've got toothpaste on the outside of it, or fluoride rinses or fluoride varnishes, and you have the saliva that's constantly bathing those teeth with the low amount of fluoride that helps to prevent cavities. 25% less cavities for everybody over your lifetime. And as a practicing dentist who looks at x-rays, I will tell you there's a difference between 25% cavities that you see in a public health study, which is where they look in your mouth with a flashlight and look around, and that's it. They're looking for holes. When we look at teeth in the clinical setting, you came to me with your child, non-fluoridated area, fluoridated area. I could tell you which area you grew up in. You would have more white spot early cavities on your teeth. You would have bigger holes between your teeth if you came from a non-fluoridated area. We will tell you as clinical dentists, I practiced 30 years, I saw had at least 200,000 patient visits in my office over those 30 years. I'm a pediatric dentist. I see these kids from their very first tooth until some of them, God knows, they don't leave when they're 18. There's 26 and 27 bringing their children in. I know what happens, I know how it happens, and the research shows that it does prevent cavities for everyone. And I worked in an area that turned out to be very highly income, a very high income area, just the way the county grew. And these people were supposedly getting the best care, doing their home care. Didn't happen. Everybody gets cavities. Still happens. Thank God it's less. Adults, again, you benefit from fluoride as was not necessarily thought of before. Studies have shown, again, that you not only benefit from cavity reductions on the crowns of your teeth, but hugely on the roots of your teeth. There are no alternatives to water fluoridation. There are none. At 0.7 milligrams per liter, which is the current recommendation, it used to be a range of 0.7 to 1.2 parts per million. It started in 1962, that was the range. Now it's 0.7 parts per million. And the reason for that is that it used to be that we did not have climate control from north to south, east to west. What does that mean? It's not climate change. We didn't have air conditioning in our cars, in our schools, in our malls, and everywhere we went. And from Florida, I went and sweated in my classrooms. Up here, you didn't always have heating and everything in all of your communities. Water intakes are almost equal everywhere in the country now. Over the last 15 to 20 years, extensive studies have been done by Steve Levy at the University of Iowa. The same cohort, he goes to the hospital and gets these kids and follows them through for 15, 20 years. And water intakes are the same no matter where you are in the country. You need a certain amount of water in your body, you drink that amount of water in your body. Children drink the same at certain ages, adults drink the same at certain ages. It's not like you're going to drink 20 gallons a day because you happen to live in Florida. and 0 or 1 gallon because you're up here. We all intake the same amounts of water. Fluoridation is the closest thing to a magic bullet that we have. Fluoridated toothpaste is not a replacement, it's an adjunct. You need both of them. It's like when you used to have seat belts. Had seat belts in our car, and it's wonderful. When we got airbags, we didn't stop using seat belts. Both of them together are beneficial. This is the same way with toothpaste and water fluoridation. Fluoride supplements, as Dr. Johnson said, it's horrible. You get about a 30% compliance with supplements or antibiotics. You gotta buy it, you gotta have a way to get to the store to get it. And I will tell you, a bottle on my table, my wife was fastidious, she hated a bottle on the table. A bottle that was supposed to last 4 months in my house lasted 8. So it's even in a dentist home, it is not easy to continue to do that. It is something that you have to keep up with. Fluoridate the water, you don't think about it. No alternative works as well or as cost effective as water fluoridation. So there are no health risks of water fluoridation, period. Not a single one. Expert committees and scientific reviews state that evidence does not support an association between adjusted community water fluoridation and any adverse health effect or systemic disorder. The weight of the science is on the side of water fluoridation being safe and effective. No respected, credible scientific group in the world opposes water fluoridation. None. Not a single one. Does that remote work? Microphone?
Yeah.
Could I use that, please?
Sure.
But with no credible science being conducted in communities of community water fluoridation,
Where is it, Dr. Johnson?
There's one here.
Hello? Okay. With no no conducted critical science being done in water fluoridated communities, where do our opponents go to spread their fear? Because that's what happens. We don't have something we can hang our hats on, we start going elsewhere. Well, Dr. Conant has used many times the discussion of IQ. He used studies that have come out from China in areas where water is endemically high in fluoride. This is not water fluoridation. This is fluoride levels that are several times higher, 5 to 10 times higher or more than they are in water fluoridation. Water fluoridation is 0.7 milligrams per liter. This is the water that comes through in India, China, Iran, and Mongolia. Those are some areas where it is very, very high. And they looked at these studies. The Harvard researchers did a meta-analysis, which means they looked at studies that were done in China. The authors, Dr. Graham Jean on the top right and Manna Choi, all looked at those studies, and they concluded that those studies had some really hefty open areas of problems with them. They were not really well done studies, 15 people in a study, I mean, on and on with problems. But when the opponents began to use this as a reason not to stop fluoridation in Wichita, Kansas in 2012, Dr. Grangini and Choi signed a letter that said you should not use this study that we did, this actual meta-analysis, not a research study, to not fluoridate your water. You should not use our study because it does not apply to fluoride levels that you have in the U.S. Further, Dr. Grangini sent an email to a water operator in Florida, and he said, we do not wish to take sides on water fluoridation because people were trying to get the community to stop fluoridating. A health report from Dr. Conant's home state who investigated his claims and reached the following conclusion, that Dr. Conant often relies on studies of fluoride use in other countries where concentrations are significantly higher, and one of his main assertions was examined by PolitiFact, as well as just recently by PolitiFact, the assertion was found false. The other group was Snopes.com. Examples of scientific organizations that have reviewed and rejected the Fluoride Action Network's claims are, and the ones in blue are ones that Dr. Conant spoke before. They have rejected it recently at the Environmental Protection Agency, the National Research Council in 2006, the Forum on Fluoridation in Ireland in 2002, Community Preventive Services Task Force, the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard and Assessment, health agencies in Australia, Ireland, New Zealand, and the UK. The EPA denied the petition that they just filed. On February 17th, they denied it. And the reasons it's stated in the denial by the EPA were that many studies that they were using, that the critics of fluoridation were using, were previously found to pose a very serious overall risk of bias because of the methodology or data reporting. Secondly, they explained that it denied the request primarily because the EPA concluded that the petitions, and it's not set forth a scientifically defensible basis to conclude that any persons have suffered neurotoxic harm as a result of exposure to fluoride through water fluoridation. This is one graph that I will quickly go through that shows the fluoridation opponents will say, well, fluoride actually, the cavities were actually coming down in countries all across the world without fluoridation. This is about the time, this was a World Health Organization data point for countries. About the time that fluoridated water began, or fluoridated toothpaste began to be used, they started coming down. An anti-fluoridation researcher took those lines and straightened them out. Well, that looks nice, but you can't do that in science. You can't make straight lines like that. In Ireland, they did the study, and they showed that people without water fluoridation were at a level here in number of cavities. Added water fluoridation, a 25% reduction. Dr. Connick tried to use the argument of fluoride being an enzyme inhibitor when he was in Brooksville, Florida in 2013. The head pediatric endocrinologist in the United States spoke out and said she was appalled at this statement by Dr. Connick that claimed that drinking fluoridated water causes clinically significant harm to the endocrine system. It does not. Dr. Connick has spoken extensively about this book, Fluoride, 2006 Fluoride Review by the EPA, and it's regarding fluoride naturally in the water at 4 parts per million. And I will tell you that there will be more discussion on that when he speaks. The health goal was that of any contaminant in the water is that it cannot cause an adverse health effect and the margin of safety is adequate. Well, the 12-member committee considered 3 different points at which they found that all the literature they reviewed over a 3.5-year period could be looked at as an issue to those that drink water 4 milligrams per liter or higher. And that was severe fluorosis, skeletal fluorosis, and bone fractures. And John Dool, who is a toxicologist that was in charge of this group, said he did not see any valid reason scientifically for fearing adverse health conditions from water fluoridation. So, no problems with anything else. Was there an issue with the teeth? Yes, and that was that at 4 parts per million, you have it at 7, that's 6 points that you have it at 0.7, that's 6 times higher than you would have in your water. You got severe fluorosis, which we can discuss later. And at 2 milligrams, 2 parts per million, it went away. You would be at 1/3 of that level in your water when you fluoridate it. The claim that mother's milk does not contain fluoride because it's protecting the baby. Mother Nature knows best. Well, Mother Nature also does not put in vitamin D, vitamin K, and enough iron. So to say that mother's milk is complete and does not need anything else in it, and fluoride is being protected because Mother Nature knows best, would be to say, let's let babies have problems with brittle bones, clotting, and anemia. No, we have doctors that Mother Nature has given brains to figure out how to save our babies. And that's why we do this. They're giving them supplements within a short time after birth. But yet, it's either a misleading statement or it's one done purposely. I also want to close with a discussion that Dr. Connick makes about the Cochrane Oral Health Group. Cochrane Oral Health Group is a group that, the Cochrane Oral Health Group is a group that reviews scientific literature, and they came out with a report in 2015 on water fluoridation. He likes to state that they do not find water fluoridation to be effective today. Well, that is incorrect.
I traveled to London in summer of 2015, and I met with those Cochrane Oral Health Group folks. I discussed with them about the report. Their report entirely was about, it's the same as before and after. Here's penicillin. Let's give it to a group that's sick and not sick and see what happens. That's the type of studies they were looking for. Well, those studies aren't done anymore. We can't deny somebody a proven safe public health measure. It's the same with water fluoridation. They use randomized controlled trials primarily. That's what we did not have randomized controlled trials. We had observational ones to find out that smoking caused lung cancer. Sexually transmitted diseases were causing infections, and that alcohol was causing liver disease. Does anyone say we need randomized controlled trials now to go back and find out if smoking is bad for us? No. It's observational. You see a problem, you find the causation of it, and then it's done. Well, they did find these amounts of cavities that were reduced, but most of these studies were old because the newer studies don't meet that same before and after. Nobody does that anymore. I can't tell this community next to you that's not fluoridated that wants to. No, you guys wait. Let's let it happen here in Meadville and see what happens to y'all, how many more cavities you get. That is unethical. To close, even the Cochrane Oral Health Group said that randomized controlled trials are not appropriate for water fluoridation. That is in their report. You're welcome to read it. I can supply it to you if you'd like. Lastly, the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, which gives recommendations to communities. They're an independent group, just like the NRC, non-paid, just like I am, and Dr. Slott. The Cochrane Oral Health Group, the same one that came out with the report in 2015, are the ones that reviewed the literature that group came out with. The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force went on fluoridation, and they found strong evidence and recommended water fluoridation for everyone. Thank you all very much. Please fluoridate your water.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson? Dr. Knapp? I'll give you a 20-minute sign. Okay? And then 15, 10, 5, and 1.
He's doing 10. He needs to 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you a sign that says you have 20 minutes left. Your 10 minutes has been put that.
Well, I'm going to speak. Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Hi. Nice to see you folks here tonight. My name is Chris Knapp. I'm a local chiropractor, citizen of Meadville. This is how I got involved with the fluoride issue. I was walking up the steps of the YMCA and I saw a paper box, and the box said that the local Smiles group wanted to add fluoride to our water. And it disturbed me. I remember back in the 70s when my dad was involved with this issue, and he advised us, if this ever comes up again, look into it. And I did. And here's the marker that I used. And I just came up with it indiscriminately. It wasn't planned. 8%. I said, I'll get involved with this issue. I knew about dental fluorosis. If more than 8% of our community is affected by fluorosis, I'll get involved. Well, 41% of our 12 to 15-year-olds in the United States have some form of dental fluorosis. So that exceeded that 8%, and that's what got me involved in this. Now tonight, the proponents have a big task ahead of them here. It's not an easy one. In order to justify forcing people to drink water containing fluoride, they have to provide compelling scientific evidence that swallowing fluoride actually lowers tooth decay by a significant amount. They also have to prove that swallowing fluoride over a lifetime is safe for everyone, including bottle-fed babies, people with poor nutrition, people with kidney problems, diabetics, people who exercise a lot, drink more water than those who don't. And what I mean by this is peer-reviewed primary studies, and especially randomized control studies. After 70 years, there's not been one randomized control trial demonstrating that swallowing fluoride lowers tooth decay. You saw a lot of endorsements. Fluoride proponents cite a long list of professional bodies, dental associations, government agencies that endorse water fluoridation. But endorsements aren't science, they're opinions. And those opinions are only as good as the science that's mobilized to support them. Make a careful note tonight of any primary research studies that are cited by either side. Fluoridation proponents will advise you to start fluoridation, but they will accept no liability for any harm that it may cause. In other words, their recommendations are hollow as far as liability is concerned. Dummy reviews. Beware of reviews that are conducted by hand-picked pro-fluoride panels. Here's some example of dummy reviews. The 2002 Irish Fluoridation Forum, the 2007 Australian review, the 2011 healthcare review that they did in Canada, the 2016 Australian review. Let's talk about the Health Canada panel. In the case of the 2011 Health Canada review, they relied on a panel of 6 experts, 4 of which were dentists and well-known pro-fluoride advocates. There is a long history of bad science as it pertains to fluoride. Trials were begun in 1945 in Canada and the United States. But in 1950, before any trials had been completed or any solid health studies conducted, the United States Public Health Services endorsed fluoridation. How can you do that? Between 1950 and 1952, nearly every major dental and medical organization in the United States had endorsed fluoride, still without any published science. These endorsements were not scientific in the 1950s, and they are not scientific today. Now, what these endorsements represent today is how really difficult it is for bureaucrats to change their minds once they've adopted a policy. According to Dr. Conant, when policy is king, science becomes a slave. And that's flipped upside down and it's backwards. What we should do is look at science, determine our policy, not have the science fit the policy, which is what happens today. It's particularly shocking when civil servants stoop to using outright propaganda tactics. Now, the pictures that you're going to see here appeared on a postcard in Queensland, Australia, one day prior to a vote on mandatory water fluoridation. Here's the first picture. Teeth exposed to fluoridated water. Nice picture. The next one you're going to see are teeth when you don't use fluoride. (2007). The picture on the right is a picture of baby bottle tooth decay. Now note there's no difference in the prevalence of baby bottle tooth decay between fluoridated and non-fluoridated communities. Note the top teeth look awful, but the bottom teeth look pretty good. Now why is that? Well, because when a baby's sucking on the bottle of soda or Kool-Aid with sugar in it, the top teeth are exposed to the sugar, but the tongue protects the bottom teeth. So that's why you see that picture. These kind of tactics really wouldn't be necessary if the science was on the promoter's side, but it's not. That's why after 7 years, there's been no detailed or documented response to the book, The Case Against Fluoride. And that was written by Dr. Conant, Dr. Beck, and Dr. Meadville. That's why the ADA has not updated its document fluoride facts for 12 years. This is why proponents will very seldom agree to publicly debate leading scientists opposed to fluoridation, like Dr. Conant. More propaganda. Could Dr. Johnny Johnson explain how the American Fluoridation Society calculated the following numbers in this figure, which was posted on his Facebook page? It says, did you know that if you drink, you would have to consume 43,190 liters of fluoridated water every day for 2 years before they start to feel any toxic effect at all? Now the problem with that is this is a lethal dose. It's not a toxic dose. Let me explain. The American Fluoridation Society is confusing lethal with toxic dose. Even so, the numbers are ridiculous. 43,190 liters times 0.7, 30,233 milligrams. That's 30 grams of fluoride. 5 is a lethal dose. This amount in 1 day would kill 6 people. I want to draw your attention to the bottom. It's outlined in red. It says know the science. Thank you. So, let's go back to the 50s. You'd have to, this is what they said in the 50s. You'd have to drink over 400 gallons of water containing 1 parts per million to receive a toxic dose. Such a large drink of water might kill you, of course, but water alone would do the job without any help from fluoride. So you see, they're using the same argument that they used in the 50s today, and it still doesn't, I hate to say it, hold water. Before any trial had been completed, they have switched from research mode to promotion mode and propaganda mode. These kind of misleading tactics have been used for over 60 years by those promoting fluoride. Over on the desk, there's 40 examples in the handout, Chapter 5 in Dr. Conant's book on the table. Please get those at the break. Am I done?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd too like to thank you all for coming here tonight. I like the light blue shirts. I'm glad you're supporters of Cambridge University. And the board, and Johnny Johnson and Steve Slott. As Joseph Joubert said, the Frenchman, it's better to debate an issue without resolving it than resolving it without debating it. So I applaud Johnny and Steve and Denise for debating this, and I hope that we can disagree without being disagreeable. But thank you most of all for you folks coming out tonight. As you've heard, I'm a retired professor of chemistry. I specialize in environmental chemistry and toxicology. I spent 21 years researching fluoride's toxicity. I didn't want to do it. My wife twisted my arm. I co-authored this book you've heard about. And the important thing here is I have 2 co-authors. This isn't my book. This is our book. Dr. James Beck, MD, PhD, a retired professor of physics. Spenning Micklem, a retired professor of biology. We made the arguments totally transparent. We documented everything. And after 7 years, we've had no scientific response to it. You can bet your bottom dollar, if the other side did this, put out a book called The Case for Fluoridation, within a few weeks we would have mobilized our scientists and we would have responded. Fluoride is not a nutrient. There's no such thing as fluoride deficiency. There's not one biochemical process that needs fluoride to function properly. The tooth decay is not caused by lack of fluoride. It's caused by too much sugar, a poor diet, and poor dental hygiene. Even fluoridation promoters admit that fluoride works, if it works at all, to lower tooth decay. It does it through a topical mechanism, not systemically. So why swallow it? Tooth decay and poverty. Most tooth decay, 80% in the United States, is concentrated in low-income families. Tooth decay is a function of poverty. Sadly, 80% of dentists refuse to treat children on Medicaid because the financial returns are too low. I'm glad to say that Steve Slott is here and he's an exception to that rule. He does treat them, or did treat them. While it's an appealing emotional argument to fluoridate water to help poor children, the last children who need to swallow fluoride are poor children, because fluoride's toxicity is made worse by poor diet. And don't forget that their low-income families can't afford those avoidance measures. You'll hear later that fluoride possibly, potentially lowers IQ. The last children in the United States who need their IQ lowered are children from low-income families. Fluoride is very toxic. It forms hydrogen bonds which underpin the structure and function in biology. It forms complex ions with calcium and magnesium and many other important metals in the body. As a result of fluoride ion, interferes with many important biological functions. It inhibits many enzymes. The first opponents of fluoridation in the United States were biochemists, particularly enzyme chemists who won Nobel Prizes like James Sumner. It also switches on G proteins, which are important messaging systems. For more details of the toxicology, please review this article, Barbier and co-workers. Nature's defenses against mechanisms. Because fluoride is so toxic, throughout nature you'll see nature devising strategies to limit the exposure to fluoride. First of all, in bacteria, fluoride, the bacteria produce proteins which go in the membrane and pump out the fluoride. The same thing happens in some higher organisms. The work on this has been done by Ron Breaker at Yale University. In mammals, the first defense is to excrete as much of the fluoride out of the body as they can. About 50% of the fluoride you take in each day is excreted, much less for people with poor kidney function. The second defense, could you give me some water? That's right here. The second defense is to sequester the fluoride in the bone and the other calcifying tissues, to get it away from the blood, to get it away from the soft tissues. And nature protects the baby from fluoride by keeping the levels in breast milk very, very low. The level in breast milk is 0.004 parts per million. Now, who's right about this? Nature that experimented with the baby's first meal over millions of years, or a bunch of dentists from Chicago, the ADA? I put my money on nature. Nature knows that fluoride is very toxic, and she knows that the developing system of the baby is very fragile. So what water fluoridation does is to remove that protection. If a parent makes up formula with fluoridated tap water, that baby's going to get about 200 times more fluoride than nature intended. 200 times more than a mother breastfeeding. There are many health concerns. You've got a very, very one-sided and biased view of this document, the National Research Council of 2006. I testified before them. I'm glad to say that most of my testimony ended up being discussed in that book. But they make it clear there are many health concerns. Fluoride can damage the teeth when swallowed before the permanent teeth have erupted. In 2010, as Chris pointed out, the CDC admitted that 41% of all American children had some form of dental fluorosis. This is age 12 to 15, 41%. Here it is. 28.5% very mild, 8.6% mild, 3.6% moderate or severe. This is what mild dental fluorosis looks like, up to 50% of the enamel impacted, moderate and severe, 3.6% of American kids affected. 100% of the enamel is affected. That is not caused by water alone, it's caused by total fluoride dose. And I'm afraid the proponents of fluoridation constantly and self-servingly confuse the difference between concentration and dose. It's not concentration you have to look at, it's dose. How many milligrams a day that you swallow? Fluoride accumulates in the bone over a lifetime. The first symptoms of skeletal fluorosis are identical to arthritis. We've never studied that issue in the United States. Fluoride can make the bone more brittle, increasing fracture risk. 2 important studies there. There's an unrefuted study that shows that fluoride increases the risk of osteosarcoma by 5 to 7 times in young boys when exposed to fluoridated water in their 6th, 8th years. That's never been refuted. But even so, Dr. Johnson here can get up and say there is absolutely no evidence of harm. Well, that isn't no. There is evidence. The fact that he doesn't recognize it or believe it is not the point. It's out there in the literature, and it's documented. It was peer-reviewed, and it was published. Fluoride accumulates in the human pineal gland, Luke 2000 animals. Neither finding has been pursued in any fluoridated country. Why not? The National Research Council said several lines of information indicate an effect of fluoride exposure on thyroid function. And even though this issue has been recognized since the 1930s, no fluoridated country has studied this issue epidemiologically until the study by Peckham and others in 2015. They found an association between the prevalence of hypothyroidism in the UK and fluoride levels in the water. Again, no evidence of harm. What is that study? Okay, you can disagree with it, you can challenge the methodology, but the fact that it's there and it should be recognized and it should be discussed and admitted to by the proponents. It is apparent that fluorides have the ability to interfere with functions of the brain. Since that statement was made by the National Research Council, there have been another 200, over 200 more brain studies published since 2006. So here are some of those 300 plus brain studies. The Harvard meta-analysis, which Johnny referred to, the Harvard team, it was 27 studies that they looked at, published in the Environmental Health Perspective. They admitted that there were weaknesses in the studies. Largely there wasn't enough information. But what they also stressed, which Dr. Johnson just forgot to tell you, was that they found a remarkable consistency in these results. That 26 out of these 27 studies found a lowering of IQ in the high fluoride village. And these studies were done at different times by different research teams in different countries and different geographical areas, but they all found, except one, lowering of IQ in the high fluoride village, and the lowering was substantial, 7 IQ points on average. Dr. Philippe Grandjean said fluoride seems to fit in with lead, mercury, and other poisons that cause chemical brain drain. But these IQ studies are only the tip of the iceberg as far as the studies indicating fluoride is neurotoxic. Over 100 animal studies shows that fluoride can damage the brain. 34 out of 36 animal studies dealing with learning and memory showed animals exposed to fluoride were impacted. 51 now out of 58 human studies. 12 studies, 7 human, 5 animal linked fluoride with other brain dysfunctions. And 3 fetal studies shows that fluoride could damage the fetal brain. The animal studies, remember this, there are many weaknesses in animal studies, but the good thing about animal studies is you can control everything except the thing that you're looking at. So you can put animals in mazes, and the only difference between 2 groups of animals is that one's had fluoride and the other one hasn't. And the ones who got fluoride don't learn so well, don't memorize so well. And that's very consistent now with the human studies of lowering of IQ. Here's the most important of the IQ studies, which was ignored by the EPA, who rejected our petition, ignored by, the proponents. They compared the IQ of children in 2 villages. One village had a low fluoride concentration of 0.36 average. The other one had a concentration of 2.5, not 5 to 10 times higher than 0.7. Very close. They controlled for lead exposure and iodine intake and retrospectively for arsenic. They found a drop of 5 to 10 IQ points across the whole age range between these 2 villages. Here you see the whole IQ curve shifted over. Fewer highly intelligent and more mentally handicapped. Now they did something else which was incredibly important. They subdivided the high fluoride village into 5 groups of increasing fluoride concentration. So you see the green box there, A through E is the 5 groups, F is the control. You see the concentrations are ranging from 0.75 up to 4.16. Then look at the IQ. Look at the IQs. This is all in one village, so they've knocked out any comparison between the 2 villages. This is all in one village. You see that we've got a dose-response relationship here. As the fluoride concentration goes up, the IQ goes down. None of the proponents who dismiss these IQ studies go into this study in any depth. There's the dose-response relationship, and look where fluoride IQ is lowered, between 0.75 and 1.5 parts per million. Don't tell me that that's hugely greater than what we use in the United States. We range from 0.7 to 0.6 to 1.2 around the world, and now it's 0.7. In a new study published a few months ago, which I co-authored, we quantified the risk here. And what we found was that a dose of 1.4 milligrams per day, that would be 2 liters of water at 0.7 parts per million, reduced the IQ of the children in the Zhang study by 5 IQ points. Now this is what Dr. Denise Johnson wrote in an editorial in the paper yesterday. She wrote, "The levels used in the Chinese IQ studies were much higher than the level used for water fluoridation in the United States. This is not true for the Zhang study. IQ lowered between 0.75 and 1.5 parts per million. Dr. Johnson also said the harms they point to in China could have been caused by lead and arsenic. But I've just told you that Zhang controlled for lead, arsenic, and iodine." Now, I think it's probably a genuine mistake, but what it shows, I think, is that you may be taking at face value what the proponents are telling you, or your bosses are telling you. It's clearly you couldn't make those mistakes if you actually read the literature. And something about toxicology, if you've got a series of studies, and you are in the position of making a judgment about risk, you don't look at the worst studies. You look at the best studies. You don't look at the highest doses, you look at the lowest doses. And this is being violated every time the proponents talk about these studies. Now I want to explain why a drop of 5 IQ points is so serious at the population level. This is something that you do to the whole population. Not just the average person or 1 or 2 people, not a patient that comes to a doctor, but the whole population is being exposed to a neurotoxic substance with every glass of water that they drink. Now, the IQ is distributed normally, like every other human trait, the bell-shaped curve. The average person clusters around the average value of 100. But it's those 2 tails that we should be concerned about. The green area is the fraction of the total of the population which is very bright or geniuses. That fraction, that green area. And the mauve area is the fraction which is mentally handicapped. If you shift the whole population's IQ down by 5 IQ points, and don't forget in the Chinese studies it went down by 7 IQ points, and in Zhang it's 5 to 10 IQ points, the average person would go from 100 to 95, and a parent wouldn't notice that, nor would a school teacher. But look what it does to your 2 tails. It halves the number of very bright, it halves the number of geniuses in your society, and doubles the number of mentally handicapped. That's devastating for a country like the United States. Absolutely devastating. And if you've got any inkling that something in paint, something in gasoline, something in dentistry could be doing that to the whole population, you stop immediately. And what makes this easier is that we're doing this to ourselves. And to stop it, all you have to do is to turn off a tap, if we could get the political will. And again, the last children who need their IQ lowered are children from low-income families, precisely those targeted for fluoridation. Yes, indeed, the Fluoride Action Network, along with 4 other groups, the American Association for Environmental Medicine, Toxic Food and Water Watch, and Organic Consumers Association, the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology, and Mums Against Fluoridation, sent this petition in. The petition called upon the US EPA to ban the addition of fluoride to drinking water under provisions in the Toxic Substances Control Act. And yes, indeed, to their shame, the EPA rejected our petition. And the rejection was based on very, very superficial science. They didn't even mention Zhang. You can see the depth I went into on the Zhang. They didn't even mention that. But they did the broad brush stroke that you've heard from Johnny and Denise. Now, the evidence that swallowing fluoride lowers tooth decay is very weak. And it cannot possibly justify the risks posed to the brain and other tissues. See chapters 6 to 8 in our book, The Case Against Fluoride. Something that may shock you. You heard that everybody's fluoridating, right? Everybody's fluoridating? Forget it. Most countries do not fluoridate their water. Most of the people drinking fluoridated water live in America. This is an American practice. 97% of Western Europe population now drinks non-fluoridated water. Some fluoridate their salt, just 4. But according to the World Health Organization data, tooth decay in 12-year-olds is coming down as fast in the non-fluoridated countries as fluoridated countries. Based upon what you've heard, wouldn't you expect that the non-fluoridated countries, there would be differences? That they wouldn't be coming down as fast? No, something is going on here as to that we cannot explain. Maybe everybody's using fluoridated toothpaste and it's the topical thing that's working best. Maybe, who knows? But the fact is, you cannot, as a pro-fluoridation person, pull out from these graphs the notion that drinking fluoridated water has a significant impact. As you've heard, incredibly, after 70 years, there's been no randomized controlled trial, and yes, indeed, it could be done on an individual level. There's no reason to stop you with a group of children who get a placebo and the children who get a 1 milligram tablet. That could be done. Not done. The closest we've got to this is the Iowa study, where Warren and co-workers set out to find the optimal dose of fluoride to lower tooth decay. They calculated for children from birth to 9 years of age how much fluoride they were getting from every source, from dental products, from water and food, and they concluded there's no clear relationship. These findings suggest that achieving a caries-free status may have relatively little to do with fluoride intake. And from David Locker in Ontario, the magnitude of fluoridation's effect is not large in absolute terms, is often not statistically significant, and may not be of clinical significance. And the most likely explanation for these unexpected results, if you believe in fluoridation, is that the CDC has conceded that the predominant benefit of fluoride is topical. Exact quote, fluoride's caries preventive properties initially were attributed to changes in enamel during tooth development, so whoops, we were wrong. However, laboratory and epidemiologic research suggests that fluoride prevents dental caries predominantly after eruption of the tooth into the mouth, and its actions primarily are topical. Summary, fluoridation is unusual, most countries don't do it, unnatural, the level of fluoride in mother's milk is extremely low, unethical, the government is violating the individual's right to informed consent to human treatment. If you go ahead with this, Meadville will be doing to everyone what an individual doctor can do to no one. Force them to take medication. Unsafe, potential for brain damage and many other harms. And unnecessary. If it works at all, it works topically. At the very least, fluoridation is a violation of the precautionary principle. If there's any doubt, leave it out. Other countries have demonstrated that there are better ways of fighting tooth decay that don't involve forcing fluoridation on everybody. These other ways are not only better for dental health, but better for the health of the body. By reducing sugar consumption, you fight obesity and diabetes. And better alternatives, the Nexo program in Denmark, I can answer questions about that from anybody that's interested. The Child Smile program in Scotland, they're getting better results than fluoridated countries. Thank you. Yeah, 10 minutes.
All right, we'll take a 10-minute break while they prepare their rebuttals. I'll call you back after 10 minutes.